You are listening to Watching Can You Believe with Brad Pomerance. I am so glad you're joining us. You might see me occasionally on Jewish Life Television. I host Air, Land, and Sea. And you may or may not know that in a former life, I was a lawyer. I was an attorney. And in the 1990s, I worked for a law firm called Gibson, Dunn, and Crutcher. And it's a law firm of significant stature. I don't know why they hired me, but we're going to be talking about an initiative that Gibson Dunn and Crutcher is heading up with James Pasch. James is the vice president of litigation with the Anti-Defamation League, known as the ADL. He's coming to us from Cleveland, Ohio. James, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Brad, it's a pleasure to be on with you today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Sure. I just want to tell you a quick story about my very first day at Gibson Dunn and Crutcher. So I am a Jewish American, and I joined Gibson Dunn in the 90s. And growing up, I knew of a club called the Jonathan Club, and it was a club that, let's just say, didn't welcome Jews. What I didn't know is that when I was away for law school, the Jonathan Club started to accept Jews. So I walk in the door my first day at Gibson Dunn, and this very senior partner takes me to lunch at the Jonathan Club. And I was absolutely mortified. And I thought, how dare he do this? How could he do this? But sure enough, the Jonathan Club had changed, and so had Gibson Dunn. And brings me such tremendous joy to read that Gibson Dunn and Crutcher is heading up several initiatives that are trying to combat anti-Semitism in the United States. Briefly, how did Gibson Dunn get involved?
Brad, that is a great question. When we set up our first helpline together, which was the Campus Anti-Semitism legal line, about 4 weeks before, so give or take some time, the October 7th terrorist attack and the ensuing massive spike of anti-Semitism here.
You set up the line before October 7th.
No. Sorry. Prior to setting up the line, right? And prior to the terrorist attack, I had met with Oren Snyder at Gibson Dunn. We'd been introduced by mutual friends, and we talked about a lot of our legal work at ADL and the pro bono assistance being provided by some prominent firms across the country. And Oren had said, if you ever need anything from us, don't hesitate to ask. In the process of that conversation, Brad, he had talked to me about how during the rise of COVID in the United States, we had that huge spike of anti-Asian hate that he and his partners had set up a nationwide helpline, right, to help the AAPI community during their time in need. And so fast forward just a month later, when we saw our college campus students bearing the brunt of the spread of anti-Semitism through this country, I called up Oren and I said, hey, you remember that time where you said if I ever need anything that I should give you a call? I was like, well, we really need something. And it's something.
Well, let me tell you, if I may,
Yeah.
I had two daughters in college on October 7th, 2023, major universities. And both of them have and continue to face tremendous challenges as Jewish American women on college campuses. And so to know and see that Gibson Dunn and the ADL have set up these helplines is quite gratifying. But I want to get a sense from you, and I want you to really kind of dig deep, James, to give us a sense of what you and Gibson Dunn are hearing from this college helpline. Because, look, I know what my daughters are facing. I can't even imagine the phone calls you're taking on this helpline.
I think it became evident to all of us, Brad, and you experienced it in your household with your daughters, right? But it became evident almost in the immediate aftermath of the attack in Israel that the weaponization of anti-Semitism in the United States created a breeding ground of anti-Semitism on our college campuses. And our college campus students, ages 18 to 22, were really bearing the brunt of the nation's massive spike of anti-Semitism. And we're not just talking about garden variety Jewish students being yelled at, right? We're talking about Jewish students being threatened, Jewish students being assaulted on and off campus, Jewish students not being able to go to school and live, work, and play for no other reason other than they were Jewish on campus, right?
You can't even imagine what I've heard, and I can only imagine what you've heard. But what's been so frustrating for so many students and parents is the silence of professors when students who are taking a class in, I don't know, virology or a class in mathematics, and you have students starting to rant and rave about what's going on in Palestine or Gaza. I mean, it is not appropriate. Unless the lesson is about the Middle East, why are students ranting and raving about anything other than mathematics? And why are professors letting them do it? And what is the ADL and Gibson Dunn and whomever else able to do to stop this nonsense?
Yeah. Brian, I can tell you what we did, right? In the immediate aftermath of what we saw was happening on campus is we set up this helpline. And what did that mean, right? It meant not going at it alone. It meant partnering with partners like Hillel International, like the Brandeis Center for Human Rights Under the Law, and making sure that we were bringing the breadth and depth of experience from all of us to the table to help college students. And in the span of a year and a half, right, we spoke to over 1,000 individuals that can't work that wrote into our helpline requesting legal assistance or guidance, right? From the Ivy League schools, Brad, that get the media attention, to universities that I had no idea existed, right, before we had a helpline, right? It's really important, and coast to coast and everywhere in between. Really important to know that, right, like Jewish students under attack, like it wasn't just at Harvard and UCLA, right? It was across the spectrum, right?
And what I want to ask, if I may, is why do you believe, or what have you learned as to why, at least in the 2023-2024 school year, the administrations of these universities, they all fell down? I mean, if these were attacks, and again, Jews don't need, I've used this cliche often, we don't need to win the Oppression Olympics. We don't need
Mhm.
to win the gold medal of the Oppression Olympics. But if these attacks had been against AAPI, African Americans, gay and lesbians, it just not, it would never, ever, ever have been allowed. And yet these administrations just couldn't figure out what to do. And they just let the tents go up, and they let students rant and rave, and they let students be yelled at, go back to Poland and you're a murderer. I don't understand why they were so tone deaf, at least in that year.
Mhm.
Some are still tone deaf,
Yeah.
others have improved. But
Mhm.
what happened?
Brad, I mean, there's no doubt about it, right? That in the immediate aftermath of the 10/7 attack and the huge spike of anti-Semitism on campus, that there was a complete lack of moral clarity, of administrations having a backbone to stand up for a vulnerable community on campus and to just do the right thing, right? Because it is,
Why? I don't get it. I
yeah.
mean, in the depth of my core, James, I don't understand why they couldn't get this right.
Yeah, Brad, and
There's probably no answer.
in
Forgive me.
some
I don't mean to.
ways, right?
Yeah,
Like in some ways,
yeah,
those university leaders need to answer that for themselves, like how they
fair
got it
enough.
so wrong, right? The question for us at ADL was what to do about it, right?
Fair enough.
How were we going to correct the wrong that we were seeing on campus for our students and ensure that the environment is not just safer now, but ensure it never escalates to get there again in the future, right? So I think there were multiple ways at ADL that we approached that, and that was everything from the call system and filing cases against universities and administrators to hold them to account and to create real change on campus, while simultaneously partnering with our national policy team, right, that put out a report card for college campuses and to
Oh, yes, I know that
right
report card.
and to
I looked at it
tell
all the time.
campuses, right? But that report card has been a really important barometer, not just for us and for Jewish students, but for campus administrators, right? Like if you got a D, you want to know why. right? And
I
what
think in
what
the end they appreciated it. I mean, I
well,
did talk to administrators at one of my daughter's institutions, and they were upset by their grade, but they understood that they needed some movement.
you know, it wasn't, both the report card and even our legal cases, right? It's not so much about being punitive. It's about forcing change, right? We wish we didn't have to force the change, right? That there was no anti-Semitism on campus, and that when there's anti-Semitism, that it's always handled appropriately by administrators. But in the absence of that occurring, it's our duty at ADL to protect and defend Jewish students across this country and to ensure that they will go to a campus every fall where they could go to class, they could go out with their friends without being harassed for who they are. It's really as
I mean,
simple as that.
look, it's that simple. And I have to tell you, and I'm going to speak anecdotally, just based upon the stories I've heard from my daughter and their daughters and their friends. I'm going to make a generalization, but as a general, from what they all experienced,
Mm-hmm.
it was often not the students of Arab descent. It was these white students that really didn't understand the conflict that were causing the most difficulty. I mean, that were really causing the hell that they were going through. I mean, many students of Arab descent, they understood the complexity of the situation. It's the irony of ironies.
Yeah, look, Brad, I don't know what the racial makeup was
Yeah,
of
it's just
students on
anecdotal.
some
Just but it,
campus.
but it just
Yeah,
demonstrates. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that this situation is complicated, and it's not as if. And I hate when it's Jews versus Muslims, Israelis versus Arabs. That's not really what we're dealing with here in America, at least. It's complicated. It's oppressed oppressors, and it's all this kind of rhetoric that gets convoluted without just kind of looking at the facts on the ground.
yeah. Well, I think, Brad, I think one of the struggles has been people's lack of understanding about what modern anti-Semitism is and how it manifests in our society today, right? A lot of times anti-Semitism is looked at through like the lens of what happened in World War II and the immediacy of the post-Holocaust layer of anti-Semitism that existed, but modern anti-Semitism, um, people have been less educated on it, and attacks on the Jewish identity or ethnicity or the Jewish
And
people's
that's
attachment to the state of Israel is where we are seeing a lot of this play out.
and that's really the key, because I've been saying from day one, it's okay to oppose the actions and speak out against the actions of the state, of any state, but the state of Israel. If you want to oppose the state of Israel, I can tell you where you should protest, and that's the embassy, the consulate. But if you're protesting in front of a synagogue, if you're in America, if you're protesting in front of a Jewish hospital, a Hallel, you're not anti Israel. You're anti Semitic, because Jewish Americans are Americans,
Hmm.
and they have nothing to do with what's going on in Israel. Just like Russian Americans have nothing to do with what's going on in Russia. And I don't see us, protesting in front of Russian Orthodox churches.
Yeah, like
I'm just
you
saying.
can, yeah. Look, um, you need to learn how to criticize decisions that you disagree with from the Israeli government without demonizing an entire people.
Let's talk about the recent initiative, which is the ADL Legal Action Network. And
Yeah.
Gibson Dunn, like we discussed, is heading that up. In this instance, you're looking to help folks facing discrimination in the workplace, public accommodations, extremist organizations, whatever it may be. It's beyond campuses.
Yep.
Talk to
So
us about that.
yeah. So Brad, when I zoom back, right, ADL has filed more legal cases over the last 2 years than we did in the prior 100 years combined. Right. And those cases span from the protection of institutions that have been under attack, to Jewish employees being discriminated in the workplace, to Jewish customers being denied service, to K through 12 anti-Semitism in our primary schools, to college campuses. Right. And although we saw our campus students really bear the brunt of the spike in the days and weeks after the October 7th attack, Brad, it became really clear early on that what was happening on campus quads wasn't just going to stay siloed, right? It was going to metastasize and spread throughout the country, and it has, right? We are looking at record levels of anti-Semitic incidents in this country, and that was on top of what was already historic highs in this country for anti-Semitism.
And I want to dig into that. And I want to be very clear. I abhor all discrimination against any religious group, ethnic group, whatever it may be. I abhor it. It is unacceptable. Period. Full stop. That being said, the FBI has come out with statistics, and they are very, very clear. America, its population is 2% Jewish, and I think it's 69% of all religious hate crimes are against Jews. Our friends in the Muslim community, who are maybe 1 to 2% of the population, 9% of all religious hate crimes. So, look, I abhor Islamophobia, but this conflation of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, I'm not at peace with that. We don't have an explosion of Islamophobia going on right now. We have an explosion of anti-Semitism. That doesn't make Islamophobia acceptable. It is not.
Yeah.
But what's the crisis? The crisis is anti-Semitic hate and violence.
Yeah. Look, as you said when you kicked off this conversation, Brad, right? There's no type of hate towards any group or individual that is acceptable in this country. Full stop. Um, uh, we are in the middle of historic levels of anti-Semitism since ADL began tracking anti-Semitic incidents of assault, harassment, and vandalism. Right? Jews being targeted where they work, Jews being targeted where they go to school, Jews being targeted for gathering in synagogues. Right? And it has to stop. It has to stop. Right?
So let me ask you then, what are the remedies? You have now this ADL Legal Action Network. Let's play a little 1L law school.
Yeah,
What
look,
are the remedies?
look.
Talk to me, Professor Patch.
Right. I started my time at ADL didn't actually start as a litigator, right? I started as a regional director at ADL. I oversaw 4 states in Ohio
Really?
and Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, and Kentucky and West Virginia. And
great.
I led our response on the ground after the massacre at Tree of Life, Brad, right? And
right, Pennsylvania.
yeah, when I would go and talk to people, I would always say ADL does 3 things extraordinarily well, and we have for the last 100+ years. We educate, we advocate, and we investigate. And now I say we litigate, Brad, because we need to use every tool in the toolkit in the fight against anti-Semitism, right? The times dictate that we add another tool, right? And what the law allows, and Brad, you know this as a prior practitioner, is right. The law allows you to represent victims of anti-Semitism the way that ADL has never been able to do before, to hold people to account in court, right, for their actions, allow those victims to tell their stories to the world, right? Because facts still matter inside the 4 walls of a courthouse,
I
right?
hope so.
And to provide, hopefully, some life-altering costs for trafficking in violent anti-Semitism, right? And in the process, create new, better, and stronger laws to protect the Jewish community now and into the future.
So let's talk about, you hinted at it. How do we balance the rights of Jewish Americans versus the First Amendment rights of those that want to speak? Because that is a balance, that is a struggle. Um, and I mean, look, if someone yells at me, go back to Poland, I
Yeah.
mean,
Well,
methinks my
I mean,
constitutional law professor would say
yeah.
that's protected speech.
Yeah. So, um, I say this all the time. Yeah, if we want to bring it back
Mm.
to the college campus context,
Or
Brad.
even anywhere. I mean,
Yeah,
anywhere.
like
Go back to
look,
Poland.
you could say really terrible, hurtful, and anti-Semitic things to people. And it is First Amendment protected. But when the speech crosses over into threats or into violence, you've now crossed over that First Amendment threshold into something that's legally actionable. And on a lot of settings, and
Yeah.
including on college campuses, Brad, right? It's a matter of figuring out, yeah, you could have a rally, right? Of students that are chanting terrible things, right? But you could create time, place, and manner restrictions around
Yeah.
the rallies so that, as you referenced in the beginning of this call, so that you're not allowing for encampments to be set up
Mhm.
for
Right.
weeks on
For
college
sure. For
campuses.
sure.
Right? There
Undeniable.
are ways to draw lines and to have institutions enforce time, place, and manner restrictions.
But let me ask you. So, look,
Mhm.
there's no doubt that the universities, or really anywhere, a park should not allow encampments.
Yeah.
Or they can, if they choose, create those TPM restrictions, time, place, manner restrictions. But if someone is screaming at you, go back to Poland, where 3 out of the 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. Um, you should have burned in the gas chambers. Um, I mean, is that protected speech? I mean, if you have a mob screaming at you like that, you know, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
is that, I mean, it's verbal violence. There's no doubt about that.
Like, look, there's no doubt that saying those things to another individual is horrific, right? Horrifically anti-Semitic. We shouldn't tolerate it. There should be no space for it. But it depends, Brad, on, right. Is this an individual who's walking past you in the street who says something to you?
Right.
Is this a a a protest where barricades that was originally permitted, but barricades have been broken, and now you're now you have to walk through them, and it crosses over, right? There are each case is fact specific, Brad.
Well, let's
Um,
take, for example, what
yeah,
happened recently in New York at
yeah,
Park Avenue Synagogue,
hmm
where Jewish people were trying to enter the synagogue, and they were, I mean, just bombarded
yeah.
by
And
a
look,
torrent of verbal violence. I
um,
mean, is that actionable, legally actionable, civilly or criminally?
what happened recently outside of the synagogue on the Upper East Side was an abomination, Brad. And um, Jews, or anyone for that matter, should never feel threatened to enter their religious institution. Um, and uh, and so let's just start there, full stop.
Okay.
The Department of Justice has launched an investigation. I know they announced that yesterday evening. And as far as whether things are legally actionable, Brad, it would depend on where people's access blocked. Did people feel threatened, like they couldn't walk in to their place of religious observance? And we're getting to the bottom of that as we speak. So I don't want to elaborate on that very moment, but it depends on who did what and to whom.
I
And a
understand.
lot of those facts are still very much coming to light in real time.
I want to
Um,
go back to the Legal Action Network,
yeah.
and I was reading that AI is going to evaluate some of the claims, which is fascinating to me. Fascinating.
Mhm.
explain how that's going to
Yeah.
work. I mean, it's, you know,
Yeah.
we're in a different
Um,
world. I can tell you, I didn't
yeah.
know from AI when I went to law school, I was having
Yep.
to shepherdize with books. You know what I'm
Uh,
talking about?
I had to shepherdize plenty too, Brad.
Shepherdize,
So
for those that don't know, is to
yeah,
make sure a case is still a valid law. I guess is that the word? Hasn't been reversed or overturned
yeah,
or whatever it is. Okay,
yeah.
so
I don't even
yeah,
know if law firms have libraries inside of them
I
anymore.
don't think
The
so.
first
Yeah.
firm I clerked in, there was the big library that
Oh
who knew
yeah, it
them.
was beautiful. It was beautiful. F's up.
Yeah. Um. So the way the process works is right. If you're a victim of anti-Semitism and you want to speak to a lawyer pro bono, Brad, you would go online to the ADL Legal Action Network website and you would fill out a form, right? AI on the back end is just doing the first immediate check. In other words, Brad, if you come in and you say like, this happened to me 4 years ago, and we're like in New York, the statute's 2 years.
Right, right,
I'm
right.
like,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like it's going to immediately take things that are not cases and ensure that right away that they're not a case. Right now, there's still maybe something that we could help with on the policy end for you, or the regional office might be able to help, etc. So every time we close a case, it doesn't mean that we're not helping. It just means the legal team can't dismiss in the matter. And then after that initial AI review, then the ADL legal team and the team of lawyers that I work with does a review. And then from there, the claims or the cases that seem to be legally actionable or potentially have some legal merit to them then go out for a full intake
Mm,
from a lawyer at one of our pro bono volunteer firms. We have a committee of 7 firms that are doing the intakes for
fantastic.
all of the incidents that come in, and then we meet weekly after those intakes are done. We discuss those intakes and then decide, hey, there isn't a case here, or there's a potential case here. And the case here,
Have you
Brad,
taken cases? I mean, are cases going?
oh yeah, cases are going in real time, Brad.
Okay,
So, right,
okay.
we launched recently. We've reviewed over 250 files so far, and we have matched firms up with constituents in real time to provide pro bono legal representation.
I have to say, James, that's simultaneously wonderful and devastating. I mean, to think that there are 250 cases that 250 people thought that they had been wronged. I mean,
It's a
in
very short amount of
America,
time.
in
Yeah.
America in the 2020s, are you kidding me? That 250 people have been under assault, verbally or physically, because they're Jewish. I mean, I can't believe that this is where we are. James, if someone wants to access the ADL Legal Action Network, tell me exactly how they can, because we are very lucky that you are doing what you're doing with Gibson Dunn and the other 6, 7 firms, whatever it is.
Thank you, Brad. All they have to do is, go in their search engine, whatever search engine they use, and just type in ADL Legal Action Network. It will pop right up. Click on the link, and then there's a form for you to fill out. It's not a time-intensive form; just gives us the basic details to start the process.
I'll
Um,
say one thing very quickly. When I
yeah.
was a lawyer at Gibson Dunn, for 1 year of my time there, I was Mr. Gibson. And what that meant is that if someone called up the firm and said, "Can I speak to Mr. Gibson?" the calls would go to me. And I would take the calls and, kind of decide, well, is this worthy for Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher? So in a way, I'm like, precursor to AI. I was the one that was kind of,
You were
reviewing.
the AI machine before there was an AI.
Exactly, exactly.
And I'll say this: Gibson has done a tremendous lift here with ADL, both on
Yes.
call and with this network. But the host of firms that are involved in this
Oh,
network,
yes, yeah, yeah.
Brad, has been right. We're talking about over 40 firms in this country who
It's
have raised
amazing.
their hand.
Is Jones Day the big firm in Cleveland? Are they still the big firm in
Right,
Cleveland?
Jones is part of a network.
And they're Cleveland based, right? Aren't they
Yeah,
Cleveland based? Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
couple
Okay,
of
so that's
large Cleveland-based firms that are
um,
part of the network, including Jones Day and Benish. Uh,
right. Oh, sure, sure, sure. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
Ohio's got a great Jewish community. I mean, Cincinnati, HUC,
yep,
Cleveland, Shaker Heights. I mean,
yep.
you got some great Jewish
We have a
history in the
tremendous
state of
Jewish
Ohio.
community. And the Jewish community organizations throughout Ohio are just
Yeah.
really terrific.
James, before we conclude, could you maybe tell us one case where the ADL and your team is particularly proud because of the settlement or the result that we saw?
Yeah. One of the things that we're seeing a lot through the new helpline that has been set up is anti-Semitism permeating the K through 12 space. And one of the things that ADL did is we brought a case with our partners at Brandeis Center and AJC and the law firm of Covington against the Santa Ana Unified School District. And this actually predated October 7th, right?
It's just down the road from me. Right
Oh,
down. I
yeah.
know the case well. Tell us what
And
happened. It is
well,
horrifying.
it exposed some really significant levels of anti-Semitism in the district, right? Everything from school administrators musing about holding votes on the Jewish holidays so that the Jews wouldn't show up. Um,
And the
to
irony is, if I may, Santa
Yeah,
Ana is not have a particularly large Jewish community. I mean, it's just doesn't, and so it's like this notion of anti-Semitism with no Jews. I mean,
yeah,
like I don't know the numbers, but
yeah,
it's like why Santa Ana? Like, why do they even care?
yeah.
Uh,
But the purpose of it was to hide um, what what they were embedding into the curricula without the knowledge of the greater Jewish community of Orange County, right?
right.
And by the time we were done with discovery and then we agreed to a settlement with the district, right? The district had to agree to disband the ethnic studies committee that had been formed to go back and to stop teaching the material, and B, if they were going to reintroduce those subjects, to have to go back and do it the right way. And it went so far as to, they even wound up paying for the expenses in the case,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, this was an example of bona fide anti-Semitic rot. I mean, it was literally in that Santa Ana Unified School District. The, the the Jew hatred was so entrenched and it was so rotten that you really had to dig deep and just clean it out.
But I also think the case sent a message well past Santa Ana, Brad, that if you try to shut the Jewish community out by violating open meeting laws and creating fake committees that you think are absolved from the open meeting laws so that you don't get input from the Jewish community, that we are watching, we are paying attention. And when you violate the law, we are going to hold you to account, because what that case showed, Brad, is what I spoke about earlier today, which is facts still matter, right? Facts still matter within the four walls of a courthouse. And because of that, we were able to create change in Santa Ana. And that is why that legal tool is so important in the toolkit.
James, I want to thank you so much for what you're doing. I want to thank the ADL, Gibson Dunn, and all the other law firms around the nation that are really working to keep Jewish Americans safe and part of this vibrant American fabric, because we are a part of the American story. My name is Brad Pomerance. We've been speaking with James Pasch. He is the Vice President of Litigation for the Anti-Defamation League. We thank you so much for joining us on Can You Believe?